Hello and happy Thursday. Also, happy Thanksgiving to all our American followers. I hope you're having a wonderful time with your family. And I appreciate you coming here with me today on this live or watching it as a replay to essentially make sure that you're planning the next 30 days if you're targeting round two most effectively. So I'm excited to be here today and talk about the next 30 days, what to do, making sure that you submit your application on time, and obviously submit an application that you are proud of on time. As usual, we have a few slides, but before we dive into those, I just wanted to invite you, whether you're joining us live or from whichever platform. This is an interactive session, so feel free to write your questions in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. We have received also questions that came through the registration form, which is excellent. So we'll try to have a discussion or answer those questions as well once we go through the slides. As a reminder, if you are looking for support, if you're looking for macro level support, we have a lot of our videos on YouTube that you can go to. If you search anything related to the MBA, I'm sure you can find something in there that that can be helpful for you. If you want a little bit more hand-holding through the process, I invite you to reach out for a consultation. Or if you just want your profile evaluated, we do have the MBA quiz that you can complete and make sure that you get some insights as to where you stand in terms of your application itself and how do you compare to other well-qualified individuals at top 20 business schools. That's typically where we're focusing on. And I'm looking on this side over here because I do have another screen that has the back end of our platform, and I am monitoring questions that come in, so I will be able to answer those effectively. So a little bit about CA admissions in terms of what we do, and then we'll dive right into the topic of today's discussion. Essentially, we have been in business since 2017, and we operate with the premise that we want to help every single individual that works with us to discover and uncover their experiences and be able to reflect, help them brainstorm ideas in terms of how to put their best foot forward to top 20 business schools. We coach them along the way in tailoring that application for each school to make sure that they capture their character effectively and also communicate that effectively based on the schools that they're targeting. We are consistently getting new insights from from schools, from past clients, and we're continuously building our roster of insights that can help future clients through this process. It is very important that when you go through an application, and as we have, I'm sure you have heard, a large number of applicants last year and this year, that means it's more competitive. So how you stand out, how do you make sure that, if you're a consultant and you have a peer who sits next cubicle over is also applying, how do you stand out between the two, especially if you're working on similar projects? And what we have found, it's authenticity, but authenticity doesn't come easily. It does require work, and we are committed to supporting our clients go through that process of crafting the narrative that makes them stand out and communicates that authenticity. And we do have comprehensive support. So we believe that we operate with the premise that we are partners with our clients, and we want to guide them through every step of the process from beginning until end, from discovering your stories, selecting schools, guiding on how to present your story for each of the schools, and then all the way to interview prep and final decision as to where you should be going in terms of your your final options. I know at this point you're probably not thinking about that, but it's a question that you must keep in the back of your mind, even from the selection process. If you apply to a school where you would never accept an offer, that would be obviously a waste of time. So irrespective of what the rank shows. So it's really important that you are authentic with yourself from the beginning, but then also, especially if you have multiple offers, how do you make that final call? And we're here to support and partner with you along that process. From my perspective, I founded SIA from the idea, essentially, that there's a lot of coaches out there who have a process, and that process does not incorporate that authentic discovery period. And that has led me to found SIA, and we keep it small, purposefully small in terms of even applicants that we work with, which obviously is reflected on our placement rate as well. So for today, I want to talk about, if you are in this period and applying to round 2, which is the beginning of January, Wharton has a January 3rd deadline, so we're very close. And you have essentially 30 days, what you should be doing to make sure that you're submitting on time. So I have a few topics that I want to cover, including discussing sort of how do you break this down, what are some common pitfalls that you want to try to avoid, some time management tools, and some tools for success to make sure that, especially if you're going through this process alone, how do you make sure that you are delivering effectively? So, as a reminder, if you have questions at any point, please, I see some of you have joined, after that intro. So if you have questions, please write them in the chat. I'll be monitoring my second screen over here. So if you have any commentary, I'm happy to answer along the way. So let's start first and foremost. So why does the final 30-day really matter? This is honestly a make or break period. You are at a point where you are most likely applying to many schools, not just one. You are still working through your job. Some of you are also working through your test, and others have secured the test but are working through the application. And as you go through this application, you will realize that it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not as easy as it seems, even if you have the ideas of what you're going to share in mind. And instead of letting anxiety take over, where there's sort of a paralysis from the perspective of like, there's so much to do, I don't know where to start, therefore I'm not doing anything kind of mindset. You want to step away from that. You want to take over and make sure that you're using this next 30 days in the most effective way. And if you don't, obviously you're going to be left with last minute applications. And we know what last minute applications look like, or panic in the last moment, and then you won't be able to get support because no one's available, and so on and so forth. So let's step away from that and let's take matters into our own hands and plan this period out. And it's important because obviously you want to make sure that you are refining your story effectively, that what's in your mind, what's in your experiences, and how you perceive those experiences, what's in your heart is also communicated on paper for someone who doesn't know you to get to know you before they invite you to interview. Obviously, a well-crafted story, well-crafted narrative is going to allow you the opportunity to have greater impact in your application. So obviously that's another reason why it's really important. And the next 30 days is really important because you really want to make sure that you are managing deadlines strategically so that you are not letting anxiety and any one of those feelings that are not necessarily moving the needle forward take over, instead of you actually taking over the next 30 days and making sure that you are effectively putting your efforts to good use. So we're going to break down the next 30 days into weeks. I think that's the most important way or most effective way to go about this. First and foremost, week 1 is going to be around prioritizing and strategizing. Obviously, you're going to write materials along the way, but before you start doing work, you want to really look at the macro, zoom out, macro level picture. We're going to then polish and enhance, and we'll go through each week. Your final reviews, you don't want to leave your application until the very last moment, right? You really want to have, at least a week of final reflections, final edits before you are ready to hit that submit button. So week 1, what are we doing? Prioritizing and strategizing. So before you can do anything, it's important to kind of understand where things are, right? So you want to assess the status of, first and foremost, what applications you're applying to, which schools are you applying to, what has been done, right? What is still missing, right? And put that into a checklist of some kind. Then you want to really build some kind of a roadmap. Excel is perfect. If you have other sort of time management tools, that's also even better sometimes. But Excel will be sufficient to build this. You want to make sure that you have the materials in place. You know what you're going to do. And then you want to just make sure that, again, you are revisiting your goals. If you're applying to the schools, if you're telling the stories that you've chosen to tell, how does it align with your goals? Making sure that your goals are set. It's integral, because without strong, proper goals, admission, it's highly unlikely. Once you have done that, then you're going to start polishing and refining, or writing, for some of you, essays. By the way, the planning does not necessarily need to take an entire week. So it could be a couple of hours that you plan those components, but it's important that you actually plan before you move forward. Once you start to move forward by week 2, you want to have finished prioritizing essays and making sure that you are working efficiently, right? And what do I mean by working efficiently? So every school is going to have multiple essays that you're going to be writing that will require you to write, and some of them are similar. So one component that you can think about is, if you have 3 schools and every of the 3 schools that you're applying to, if you have 3 schools you're applying to, and each school has a goals essay, you don't need to be writing 3 goals essays all at the same time, right? Work on one, finish one, and then repurpose and tweak for the other goals essays for the same school. So when I say prioritize the different schools or different essays for the schools. This way you are maximizing your efforts and obviously finishing within a very short period of time, right? This resume is typically very much similar across the board, so you don't once you have that one done, you don't necessarily need to do a lot more. But at this point, you really want to make sure that your resume does have quantifiable impact. But beyond that, what I often see in applicants is their resume is a list of successes. And I know you hear us talk about that a lot, but it's actually, the resume needs to show you in action as well. So it's not just about successes, because if it's a success and you're working for an organization that you do not own, then the question is, whose success is this, right? And the way that you can showcase authenticity is by showing yourself in action, your role in a given project. And if you're interested in developing your resume, we do have videos on the resume development on YouTube, so you can watch that afterwards. You also want to make sure that you're following up with recommenders and making sure that they have all the things that they need in order to write strong letters of recommendation. They have also a very short window, and if you're applying to multiple schools, you want to make sure that they're doing it effectively. They have obviously your best interest at heart if they have agreed to do this. If they have agreed to write letters of recommendation for you, they want to support you. So make sure that you are giving them everything that they need, and you do this early on, not after they have written whatever they have come up with, once you've notified them that they should be writing letters of recommendation. By week 3, you are finalizing the materials. You are going through an entire application. Typically, applicants, when you work through this process, you are going to work in silos. What I mean by that is you work on your resume, and then you work on some essays, and you're working at all different essays all at the same time, and things can get murky and blurry. So it's important that before you submit your application, that you look at an entire packet, right? Have you communicated what you intended to communicate? You go through the entire application portal, short answer questions as well. Make sure that everything is consistent across the board, that there's no errors. This requires quite a lot of focused attention. So you also want to make sure that you are doing this at a time when you have the ability to give it focused attention. This is not something you work for 10 minutes, go do something else, come back, right? If you lose focus, it means that you can lose also track of the errors that you may have in your application. And we're all human, so we're all prone to errors. It is by week 3 also, if you wanted to have any kind of feedback from anyone, this is when you want to make sure that this is done. You want to get, you're relying on other people, right? So you have to make sure that you're taking into account that they have other responsibilities as well. And you give them ample time to look at the material, and also ample time for them to think through what you have provided to them, and be able to give you some commentary based on how they perceive the material. So this is going to be a fresh perspective that you oftentimes lose in the process of just working and working and working on the same document over and over. This can be peer feedback. So if you have individuals who have gone to business school and are willing to read your materials, definitely take feedback that way. I would say take that with a grain of salt, especially because if they've gone to business school, they may see their application, or definitely have seen their application succeed. But every year there's new things that happen in the market, and they may not necessarily have the latest perspectives. If you're working with an expert, with a coach, make sure that they have also ample time to review your material and give you feedback, and they would be able to give you more commentary. Now, one thing I will say, if you are looking to work with a coach, if you give them the final review at that point, which is like 2 weeks away from the deadline, there's not much improvement that can happen before then. And what do I mean by that is, I sometimes see applicants who come in very late in the process, and they're like, I have written my essays, and then I read the essay, and the story is not quite there, right? You want to have those conversations. If you're looking for expert feedback, you want to have them earlier on, because honestly, it's going to waste your time if you are going in the wrong direction. So having that strategy initially with the coach to kind of give you directionality can be really helpful in making sure that you're not wasting your time, you're moving in the right direction. And obviously by the end, when they give you fresh perspectives or another final read, it can be much more, how do we elevate this to the next level, as opposed to, are you actually writing the right story? Some schools have also video components as part of the application submission. And I want to make sure that I highlight this because I see too often applicants underestimate how difficult it is to actually do the video session. So, for example, MIT has this year has a video component, a second video that is a part of the application process, and you have essentially 10 seconds to read the question yourself and then immediately respond. And you haven't had a chance to actually reflect on this question. So you need to practice, what does it mean to actually give a response in 1 minute? You need to practice some examples that get you in the flow of how to answer these kinds of questions effectively, right? Because you don't have unlimited amount of time. And once the 60 seconds is done, anything you have left to say won't be captured in that video, right? So make sure that you give yourself at least 2 weeks of practice for this as well. Okay, week 4, which is kind of like the final week. It is final proofreading. You want to eliminate any typos, grammatical errors. Make sure that you go through everything with a fine-tooth comb to obviously not have those distractions for the admission committee. Double check the fine print. And what do I mean by that is sometimes schools actually do give you specific instructions on how they want you to submit things. And what do I mean by that also? It's, for example, if you're applying to NYU, they give you specific instructions in how they want you to upload the document, what kind of font, how, the size of the font, how do they want the, what are they looking for specifically? That is important. You cannot underestimate that or not think about those details. Some schools like UCLA, Berkeley Haas do require you to actually send the official transcript from your school to the as part of your application. That means you need to understand that fine print right beforehand. So this is a final check to make sure that you have read all the fine print of each school that you're applying to and make sure you follow those directions. If they give you directions, they are there for a reason. So don't ignore them. And then, of course, the submission checklist. Make sure that every section is complete before hitting that submit button, making sure that you obviously have the credit card handy and all the payments that need to take into account. Make sure that your letters of recommendation have been submitted. And if they haven't, this is like your sort of last call, right? Making sure that you follow up with your recommenders, because without letters of recommendation, your application can be moved to the next round, which obviously you wouldn't have put in all this effort to go into that area. Okay, I see a question. Oh, well, congratulations on receiving a full ride from Olin. This is only a good sign. So sorry, the question is this a good sign that my profile is competitive for an M7 or top 15? I'm thinking Booth, Kellogg, Ross, Yale, Columbia, round 2. This means that you're a competitive candidate for Olin. That's essentially all that it means. It means that you can obviously aim a little bit higher in rank. But I don't know the full application and what does everything look like in order to assess if an M7 is. But going from Olin to M7 is probably going to be a challenge. But definitely look at, T15, T20 schools in that category. Okay, let's continue. So what are some common pitfalls? Prioritization. I see this so often. Applicants say that, I will leave the month of December to work on my application because I have all these responsibilities, and that by December, everything dies down. People are on vacation. Every time I hear this, I always know that that's actually, for that person, it's not going to be the case because it never fails. It's always the same story. I will leave it for December or whenever the round is. The workload dies down and it happens like the opposite. So it's really important that you don't leave the majority of the work for a period of time when you don't know exactly that you're going to be away to be able to do it, right? So this means that you should be prioritizing applications, and maybe you don't have the time to give 3 hours to the application, but you may have 30 minutes, right? Sometimes I see applicants like totally remove social media platforms from their accounts. And if you look at your weekly report, if you have a smartphone, you will see how much time you're spending online. So where are you prioritizing your time, right? Making sure that your application has priority and you have time blocks for that it's going to be the difference maker in a strong versus, in the strength of your application or your ability to write an application. Another common pitfall is that applicants ignore school-specific instructions. I mentioned earlier, they are there for a reason. Nothing in the application is just because they felt like it. It actually has a purpose. So make sure that you are following the instructions. Make sure that you give them everything that you have experiences, all your experiences, everything that you want to communicate, so that they can say yes to you, right? All these schools talk about, we are reviewing, interviewing to admit, not to reject, right? So give them the tools, give them the, show them the experiences that in order for them to say yes. And then leaving edits till the final last minute. I mean, I talked about that just earlier. This never bodes well, right? Your application is, at least this is how I see it, business school is the very important chapter into the next steps of your career. And therefore, so if something is that important, you don't leave it till last minute, right? If you're excited about this next chapter, make sure that you show it honestly, the respect that it needs. And for yourself as well, because this is actually a very important next step in your career growth. Otherwise, why would you be applying? Okay, so time management tips are something to keep in mind. So stay consistent every single day. Block 30 minutes, block 1 hour, block 3 hours, whatever amount of time you have, you can give to the application, but do it consistently. This is kind of like, you make an appointment to see your doctor, you show up, you do the same thing. You have an appointment with your boss, you show up to that meeting, right? The same thing. This is, give it personality, give your application a personality so that you take the appointment very seriously with yourself in terms of writing a strong application. Use time blocks. I have found the time blocks to be actually quite helpful in organizing your work. First and foremost, we talked about in week 1, you're going to be strategizing. So take that and break it into time blocks to make sure that you are effectively, working through the materials. Now, sometimes people say, oh, well, time blocks won't, this will be challenging to know what's going to be 4 weeks from now or how far I am. Block the time for your application, and then every day, once you're done with something, make sure that you lock another time, another one of your time blocks has a specific item that you need to continue working on. So this way, it's a kind of a progressive update of your application. Lean on your support system to give you timely feedback. I talked about that earlier. It's really important that you use this time most effectively for the right efforts, for strong return on investment kind of activities, right? So get the right feedback initially, get the right strategy initially, and then make sure that you're working towards it consistently. Tools for success. I talked about Excel earlier. So Excel for mapping, calendar for time blocks, Grammarly or any tool like that to make sure that you are not, you have the grammatical errors in check. Feedback from your peers, from coaches to make sure that you have reflected the right story. These are tools that are around you to support you in this process. And if you need any support, obviously, feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to talk about how us at C Admissions can guide you through this process. All right, I see some questions. I think we have 1 minute left, so let's go. Let's answer some questions here. Okay, so stats 375, GPA 330, GRE, amazing. I have 8 years of experience in real estate, private equity, and nonprofit management. Oh, yeah, procrastinate. We all do it. We're all human, right? And thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Yeah, I mean, these numbers look good in terms of GPA, GRE, years of work experience. It depends on how you're presenting the story, but this looks good. Like you're definitely in line with what the what M7s are looking for. I don't know. I guess why did you go to Olin? If you had these stats is a question that I have, but you know, I'm sure there are stories around that as well that you can think through. Okay, so there's an Instagram question. Can I apply if I have 2.5 years of work experience? Is work gap acceptable? If yes, how much? 2.5 years experience with a work gap, it's definitely a challenge to get in. Again, M7, T15, top 20, those kinds of schools that I'm talking about. 2.5 years of experience, I'm assuming that that would be by the start date, right? If that's by the start date, 2.5 years of experience, it's not a lot that you can share in terms of with the admission team, in terms of your readiness for business school. So I would probably use this time to really develop your profile, and you can apply next year. Target round 1, make sure that you have a really strong application. And if you have a work gap, typically anything that's more than 3 months, you have to explain, and it's acceptable because obviously, you know, life happens and there's certain circumstances. The things that are not acceptable is I took time off to study for the GMAT or the GRE. That's not acceptable. It's not a good enough reason. But if something has happened in your life that you needed to take time off, you would explain it. You would explain why, what were you doing during that period of time. So that's definitely something that's doable. But I would say a combination with a work gap and 2.5 years of experience, potentially too many red flags already. So I would say just wait another year before you submit your application. Okay, so Olin Safety School. That's a good strategy. Yeah, so that's good. At least you know you're going to business school, but you can definitely target a higher ranked school with those stats. Again, I don't know the full story, so I can't comment on more than that. But with those stats, looks really good. I feel like I'm in an essay thinking block. Can you walk me through the process of narrowing down on what I should write as my best essay for what matters most to you? This is a tough one. It's not something that I can say like, you have to write this. But in terms of how do you think through what matters most to you, I would look through various experiences that you've had in your life, especially transformative experiences, and don't go with the pressure into that exercise. That exercise should be free. You, when I was at NYU, one of the things that I loved doing is taking over a classroom. That wasn't in use, obviously. And NYU has whiteboards on all 4 corners of the classroom. And whenever I had this sort of like, I don't know how to start this kind of blocks, I would go in there and just like, you know, put everything that I had on the whiteboard, and without judgment. And then once I did that, once I felt like I've exhausted all possibilities, then I was like, okay, what's the pattern here? What are the common themes? And then take the things that matter, like take the things that, you know, speak to the theme that you've identified. That can be helpful in just figuring out how to approach this. But it's not a one size fits all. It's, you know, I talk all the time about authenticity. Authenticity doesn't come in trying to fit the mold of everyone else. Authenticity comes from digging deep into your own experiences. Now, yes, of course, the schools look for certain things, look for leadership, look for mission-oriented, look for individuals who have the aspiration to take over the world, or not take over the world, but, you know, make an impact in the world. I don't know. Do we have any people here that are looking to take over the world? That would be interesting. I'll be following your career progression. But jokes aside, you know, think about who you are, and that can help you. But don't try to pressure yourself in the process. Like when you have blocks, you have to give yourself freedom. right? And the way you are productively free is by, taking Post-it notes. Maybe obviously not everyone has access, like you may not have access to a whiteboard room, right? So take Post-it notes and write your ideas, but just something that is free, whatever free looks like to you. For me, freedom means whiteboarding. So that can be a way that you can go about this. Okay, I think we went over our allotted time for today. Hopefully this was helpful. Next week, we're going to talk about deferred MBAs. So if you're watching this, you're probably not a deferred MBA applicant. But if you know someone who is in their final year of college, final year of grad school, and is looking to secure their seat 2 to 5 years in advance of their MBA journey, definitely share the event with them, and we can give them some insight on how to approach this deferred application and find success. So thank you again. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you who celebrate, and I will see you next week.